It's a somewhat fresh spin on fantasy because we're not dealing with horses. We're not dealing with we're not dealing with magic users really because we've kind of decided that maybe it's just a low magic kind of campaign. But Mike, don't take that the wrong way. We'll still take magic items.
Okay. Yeah, a couple of fireballs could really screw us up.
Exactly. Yes. Right. But no, I think just in having a theme, it totally changed the dynamic of Mike's world of Greyhawk. It's very different than what had been run previous.
Yeah. I mean, nothing to take away from what we've done before, but there's so much difference in our own world, in cultures and things like that, that if you change up just a little thing like that in a game world, you look at it from a completely different angle. And it's things that you don't even really think about.
Right. Another theme to the campaign that has taken it in different directions was the 3d6 down the line old school style.
Well, yeah, that set the
bane of my existence.
That set the bar. These are not going to be your Errol Flynn super character.
It's not stopping
Wesley,
me. It's not stopping me, baby. I'm rocking a 7 con over here.
It's a state of mind. Is
exactly.
What you're saying. I think that you. Having a theme campaign is a restriction in of itself. Then you throw in different dynamics of restrictions, and I think you really focus the campaign. So the 3d6 down the line, in addition to saying we're going to do high seas, that's an added restriction that kind of focuses the group. So now no one's playing the general wizard.
Right, because not to mention you can't have these multi-class god characters because you don't have the stats to back it up. You got to do your one thing, and that's totally different than the campaigns previous to this one.
Well, yeah, because you get to a point.
2 campaigns ago, you guys were playing gods because you were all had stats above 15, and you played it for so long, and you had all this magic. That was a totally different style D&D campaign to the one that we're playing now.
It's certainly pedestrian.
That doesn't make it less interesting, though.
A generic character of that kind, even I guess the epic campaigns what you're talking about.
Yeah,
there was really no theme in that.
There was no
That's
theme.
what happens when you have no theme.
They could have had a sailing ship if they wanted and gone on the oceans and whatnot, but it wasn't specialized enough to where that's what they did for a living, and that's where they spent most of their times on the high seas. That was just more of a generic campaign, and so I think that's what's good about the Sea Princes is it's specialized. They specialize what they do. They aren't going to be like the epic guys where they go anywhere and do anything.
Yeah, there's a lot more versatility with a generic campaign.
Well, I don't know if there's more versatility. There's more diversity, but I don't.
Right.
Well, I think as a game master, it makes it a lot easier to come up with scenarios when going in that this is what we're going to do. You can tailor-make adventures towards that.
As I say, you can be more creative working in boundaries. I personally believe. And that to me is what themed characters and themed campaigns is all about.
I don't disagree.
Now, a generic quote-unquote character that had always been very themed is the Paladin. And we've talked about how those, the alignment parameters and things like that. If you did our All Knights campaign, that's a themed campaign.
Yeah.
We're starting to come up with these different ideas of let's do the Harry Potter-esque School of Magic campaign. Let's do a All Knights campaign. Let's do a Murder on the Orient Express Cthulhu campaign.
That would be good.
It's we're instead of just saying, hey, let's play this game, we're trying to come up with different directions for the games that we've played. And
being people who have role played as long as we have, we're starting to really discover that we're not quite out of ideas, but we need to pick a direction and say, like, we have this is something we haven't done before, so let's do this way.
It's kind of like I'd like to equate that to an actor. When an actor first starts out, they're going to play any role that they can get. You get to a certain point, and you start to
typecast.
Yeah, you either get typecast,
right,
which would be your rut, or you are be able to pick and choose which roles you want to play.
You decide to go off to Broadway instead.
Right.
Yeah. That's what we're doing. We're doing it off Broadway.
We're doing off-Broadway production of role-playing games.
We're at the Muni.
Of course, you can get lucky like Jason, and his preferred theme of character tends to fit into a lot of the themed campaigns.
Well, yes. Certain archetypes fit no matter where or what game you're playing.
I want to ask the GM, I'm going to ask Mike, which do you prefer? playing anymore now these days.
What theme?
Yeah, no,
campaign?
doing a themed as opposed to what if you just said, hey, what if you just said, we're playing D&D next week, let's make some characters, which...
Well, from a preparation standpoint, yeah, it's easier to do a just straight D&D, right out of a book, dungeon crawl. I think...
I didn't say which
in
is
the
easier.
long run,
I said, which do you prefer?
Well, what do I prefer? I prefer then the theme campaign because those are the ones that I think have the most imagination to them and end up surprising you the most. Because when you do just a generic campaign of any game genre, then everyone knows what to expect.
And somebody's like, okay,
just
well,
killing
I'll
time.
play the fighter, I'll play the cleric.
Well, the main thing I don't like, and I mean, it's been such a long time, and not even necessarily with this group of people, but I've seen and experienced in the past, when you have this open canvas and everybody's doing their own thing, it seems like inevitably somebody's always a front runner or a derailer, or things just don't...
Somebody doesn't want to play ball with the rest of them.
People,
everybody
yeah.
else.
We can sit here at the table. We kind of brainstormed before the Sea Princess campaign.
Well, I don't know if we've ever really talked about this on mic, but the way the Sea Princess campaign came about was almost like a spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, it was. We were
doing
Hero High was winding down,
Right.
and we're talking, what are we going to do next? And
and which is, of course, the bane of any.
it's how you kill a game.
Yeah.
And it's what I can't even remember how the conversation started out, but it was nowhere near what the Sea Princess was. But it came to playing. Actually, I remember part of what I told Mike. I was like, I want to play Pirates of the Caribbean. That's the game I want to play.
And it was something that.
And Mike just gave it to us last week because we had zombies. So.
But it's definitely something. The flip side of that, of course, is you can have a theme and have one person not really into it, and that could really just drag it down. If you're playing a high seas campaign and you want somebody you have somebody who's playing, a Birdman or something, just like some sort of bird ranger or something, you're like, really, you're going to play like something,
or had Jason brought his
I want to play a
prototypical
stone golem or something. It's like, what? Really? No.
Jason would have brought his,
You'd be the anchor.
Viking at port to our, very...
And that was his original idea, was he was going to play the Viking.
He was going to play a Northman.
A mysterious foreigner.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
He is still a mysterious foreigner.
It could still happen.
Well, see, and that's the funny thing, is because he had that idea, and I was like, okay, well, I'll play, I'll play the complete bastard. Imagine that.
Unsurprising.
And as I've been reading more and more of old Conan, I keep thinking, if my character dies, I am going to make the barbarian.
I can arrange it.
No, that's okay. Because
You want it to be natural?
3d6 down the line doesn't really work for barbarians. So.
Hey, man, you never know. There were scrawny barbarians. You just got to work out.
So going around the table, which do you prefer? We already asked Mike. What does everybody prefer? Do you prefer having the openness of a pickup campaign, or a non-focused campaign, or do you like the focused idea? Dan?
It's a no-brainer. I want to play a theme. I want to create an idea. I like when everybody is on board with the same idea, and I think it makes a better campaign.
That does help. Yeah,
it
makes it
I do believe it's easier to learn the rules if you're not doing that.
Yes.
Because not until we kind of started doing our own thing with Mutants and Masterminds before we played the Hero High did I even really understand the rules.
Right.
But once I got a grasp of the rules, I was like, well, no, I just think it's a lot easier to get things done if everybody's on board.
Yeah. Mark?
I could go either way, but if given the option, I'd prefer a theme. Mm-hmm. Just again because you know what your parameters are, and I've got no problem coming up with something that will work within those parameters. Like where would L5R be? I mean that's a theme campaign all in of itself.
Yeah, you really can't have a non-themed L5R campaign.
Not really. I mean, it's like I suppose you could talk a game master into letting you play a white dude with a longsword in L5R, but you'd be really out of place, and you wouldn't last very long.
And there's also other things like you could play.
What are you talking about? Tom Cruise was awesome.
The Last Samurai. Now I have to link to that.
Wow.
But,
No. I'm Bigfoot you on this one. No links to Tom Cruise. Link to one of Ken Watanabe's other movies.
You could have people, organized L5R the Heroes of Rokugan is a very focused.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where you can't play the
monks. You can't play a monk without permission.
Yeah, and you can't play the
imperial families without permission.
Imperial families.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This is a small tangent. You can't play a monk without creating your own fanfic, right? Don't
Right.
you have to? You have
Yes.
to write
Yeah, or for Heroes of Rokugan?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do your own fanfic for quite a few things, not just that. You know, if you want certain things, you have to submit fanfic.
Right.
So, but talking about having the focused or the themed campaign in L5R, if you didn't, you could have people trying to play Ratman and, you know, all kinds of stuff. You got Spider Clan and, you know, a bunch of things that really don't work together if you're playing in the Unicorn Lands or, you know, or whatever.
Now, if you're playing in Unicorn Lands, you could easily play like a Middle Eastern and do
do the Burning Sands.
Burning Sands, right.
Right.
Accepted. Go ahead and run that.
Wow.
Approved.
All right. I can do that.
Gotcha.
Sean?
Theme by all the way. I mean, it's like Dan was saying, when everybody's aboard, it just runs smooth. It's funner. I don't know. It's the only way to go, really, I think.
All right, since everybody's in agreement, I'm going to do a 180 and say
Well-
themes are crap.
Well, one thing I was going to say is...
Your theme sucks.
Yeah, learning a game is easier when you're not in a theme to some extent, but Victoriana, that was a theme because I made everybody's characters and sticking with the theme of everybody worked for the major, and everything kind of filtered through the major, that kind of thing. You can do that with a theme, whereas if you did it as character generation was intended, and they don't call them Shadowrunners, you know, like it's Victoriana is Victorian era steampunk Shadowrun, and the term for the people who do things are gutter runners.
Interesting.
So if you just made a team of gutter runners from
All rat men gutter runners. You see where I'm going with this?
Oh, man.
But, you know, you could really have a complete mashup of all kinds of different things. You'd have somebody from high society, somebody from low class that really has no
And
connections.
it becomes difficult to explain why are these people together.
Right, because then you always have the problem of starting an open campaign like that of why do I know these people? And
Right.
where do I know them from? Or are we meeting at this bar? You all meet at a bar. How many real adventures happen
Man,
when
it's
you
like-
meet at a bar?
It's very convenient.
I mean, that's how Luke met
He's got a point.
Han Solo.
That was a cantina.
Yeah.
That's
but
different.
but still,
Still
you
a
got
bar.
your smuggler and a Jedi, you know. How do they become friends?
we could
and they met in a bar.
Speaking as a person who used to frequent a bar,
I've never met a Jedi.
I've never had a Jedi.
Hey, I've drank myself into a Jedi state.
Blue milk, was it?
But it's like, never
was
have I met
invincible.
someone at the bar and then gone on an adventure with them. I usually already know people that I'm there with at the bar with.
I think Mark
should have hung
has
out
a
with me.
New Year's resolution.
have an adventure with someone at a bar.
That's right.
Okay, I've kind of stopped going to the bar because
I've
the
done
people
it.
that I meet there, I don't want to have an adventure with.
I went to an AC/DC concert with Brian one night. I went to the bathroom and had an adventure with a total stranger and never knew how I got in there.
Was it Woodside? Because
Woodside also had an adventure, a very similar adventure. Yeah, well, you know, cantinas and whatnot aside. I mean, we should have an episode where we really talk about how cliche Star Wars is, but we'll go into
Oh,
that
it's
sometime.
horribly cliche. Maybe back off. Maybe our next theme campaign is just every
bad
possible
cliche
Yes,
that
every
we-
possible cliche
No,
ever.
here's the next themed campaign.
Okay.
Characters based off of Bollywood heroes.
Yes, I will be
Bollywood.
Singham because he is the baddest man on the planet.
Wow.
That would force us all to have to watch Bollywood movies.
I would enjoy that thoroughly.
I have a defense of the generic campaign.
Okay.
Survey says.
What you can do in a generic campaign, unlike starting out in a theme, is the generic campaign can eventually turn into a theme campaign.
I can see that.
I've had many D&D campaigns end up that way. I had one time, no one at this table, as a matter of fact, I ended up having just a regular old D&D campaign for a short while turn into a Thieves Guild campaign where they ended up in charge of a Thieves Guild. And
interesting.
there was another theme campaign that started out as a generic D&D campaign, and that was one of the few times I've ever ran Forgotten Realms, and that was the Carpet
Oh,
Adventures.
yeah, the Carpet Adventures, yeah. A lot of times themes have to have like a centralized thing that keeps them together.
And this was a carpet.
It was a MacGuffin,
The MacGuffin.
a carpet
Right.
that randomly teleported anywhere in the world.
And it took gems to power
yes, so they were always looking for the
Can I be
gem.
completely honest? Part of the reason why I want to play an Alkadim style campaign is because I want a magic carpet. I want a character
Yes.
with a magic carpet.
Well, you would totally
Really
dig that,
badly.
Dan.
Yeah, it was a humongous magic carpet, and depending on the value of the gems that we used, I think it had to be rubies, but it was like different values of them or something like that. We would set them on the carpet, and they would absorb into the carpet, and then it would just random.
Yeah.
Well, it was one of the things where we had a way to control it, but we decided that we just didn't want to.
I likened it to Doctor Who.
Yeah, it was
really.
like it was like the
'Cause you
old
didn't
Tom
know
Baker
where-
Doctor
you
Who,
didn't know where it was going.
the TARDIS was broken and he never knew where he was going.
And at the end of every adventure, everyone had to get back to the carpet.
Yeah, it was like make it back to the carpet.